Welcome everyone to our last RELO Andes webinar of 2023. My name is Amy Simpson-Burden and I am an English language specialist in Lima, Peru. Welcome everyone and happy holidays. I know that for many of you, you are wrapping up your semesters. You are leaving your classrooms for a much needed and well-deserved break. So good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you are listening in from. I'm so glad you're here. Let's talk about today's webinar, Cultivating Calm and Connection, Teacher Self-Care and Social Emotional Learning. So as we are moving into the holiday season and leaving our classrooms for a few weeks, a few months, I hope you'll take this time to recharge, to take care of yourself, and to think about how you want to approach next school year with your students to promote their social emotional learning and their own self-care. So that's what we're going to talk about today. So again, thank you for joining me. And speaking of joining me, where are you listening from today? Let me know in the chat who you are, where you're listening from. Looks like we've already got several people who are sending their greetings. Munesh from Pakistan, thank you so much for being here. And I see the Regional English Language Officer for the Andes region, Sandra Story, is here. Welcome. Gabby from Tumbes, wonderful. Maria from Argentina. Edu from Peru. Jane from Belize. Aida from El Salvador. This is wonderful. I'm so thankful that all of you are here to talk about this important topic. Hello, El Salvador and Argentina, Bogota, Claudia, good to meet you. I'm so glad you're here. So what exactly are we going to talk about today? We're going to focus on both self-care and social emotional learning. I'll call it SEL for short. So self-care and SEL, or social emotional learning for teachers. We'll talk first about something called burnout, what that is, and what teachers can do to cope with burnout if you're experiencing burnout. We'll also talk about what is social emotional learning and how we can make choices and help our students in the new year. If you are interested in more resources on self-care, on dealing with burnout, or on social emotional learning, American English at State, AE Live webinars have some wonderful resources so that you can learn more about the topics that we're going to touch on today. There is a AE Live webinar on social emotional learning, and there are some documents that are available for resetting and reconnecting for your own well-being that's put out by language specialists through American English at State. So I hope you'll check those resources out after this webinar ends. And I'll load this webinar down with resources for you so that while you are in this process of recharging and reconnecting with yourself and your own well-being, you can take a look at those resources. So first, I learned this fact today. Did you know that teachers typically make 1,500 decisions every day? 1,500 decisions every day, you as a teacher. So no wonder teachers look forward to quiet moments with a chance to unwind and refresh. So with that in mind, with the knowledge that you have been making 1,500 decisions every day in your practice as a teacher, how are you feeling? I put some emotions on the screen from my favorite Christmas movie called Elf. I don't know if you have seen it or not, but it's a very funny movie. And I would like for you to choose one of the pictures that describes how you're feeling today and write that number in the chat. So you may notice the 3 pictures at the top are 1, 2, 3. The middle pictures 4, 5, 6. And the bottom pictures from left to right are 7, 8, 9. So, what version of Elf do you feel like right now? Seven. Oh, good. That's an excited elf. I'm so glad, Maria. Floor also says 7. What else? Share with us. Claudia is an 8. Looks like she is still hard at work, focused on her task. Oh, and that's also the scene where he's checking on the toys, and the toy is about to surprise him. Marcella is a 9. Ah! Let's see. Where am I right now? Maybe a 6. Maybe that is where I am in my week. The holidays are almost here for me. I will have next week off for the holidays. So for right now, I'm feeling a bit of a 6. Alfredo is a 7. I'm so glad to see some positive 7s. Sometimes I feel like a 9, Sandra says. Yeah. Sometimes I feel like a 9 as well. Harry, that's very true. Sometimes your emotions are so mixed. You can be a 1 and a 7 at the exact same time, just because you're so mixed. Lucho from Argentina, welcome. And 2. Singing loud for all to hear. Janice is also a 7. That's great. So this is an activity you can also do with your students. You can check in with your students at the beginning of a class meeting to find out what they're feeling and thinking at the beginning of your class. That can give you some information about how to respond to student behaviors, or potentially how to change what you were planning to do that day. If all of your students, are saying that they're a 9, maybe that means that you change something about the way your class is going to be run that day, so that you can meet the needs of your students where they are, and work with the feelings and emotions that they have. That also shows that you really value their feelings and their emotions, that it's okay to express those in your classroom. All right, so as I said, we're going to talk about something called burnout. What is burnout? Studies have shown that burnout is a major factor in teacher attrition, meaning teachers leaving the classroom, and teacher shortages. I've learned that burnout is cumulative. It means it builds up over time, and it's caused by prolonged periods of stress, meaning stress over many days, weeks, months. The first part or dimension of burnout is called emotional exhaustion. That involves when you feel emotionally overburdened, overwhelmed with emotions. There's too many emotions. And that can cause anxiety. It can cause energy loss, where you're feeling down and tired. And it can cause other symptoms like feeling sad, feeling isolated or lonely. This second dimension of burnout is called depersonalization. It means that you avoid certain interactions at school. Or maybe you become a little indifferent or less caring or less feeling. You have maybe at the beginning of the school year, you feel so positive, so hopeful. But by the end of the school year or by the middle of the school year, you feel less positive. You feel a little more grumpy about school or about your job or about teaching in general. These feelings can lead to anger. It can make you a bit impatient with your students. The third part of burnout is that feeling of personal accomplishment, it goes down as you burn out. This sense of satisfaction with your job, with your career, it goes down. That leads to feelings of feeling somewhat useless or like there's no point. So in this part of burnout, teachers tend to see themselves and grade yourself as a teacher negatively. You see yourself in a negative light. You see your job in a negative light. You may see yourself as not being a good teacher anymore, of being ineffective. So burnout doesn't only affect your well-being, but it also affects the well-being of your students. Studies show that teacher burnout leads to student stress as well and lower academic achievement. So we want to avoid getting burned out in the classroom in teaching. And so let's talk about some of the ways that we can avoid burnout, we can cope with burnout, and we can get ourselves out of these places. So first, are you burned out? How do you know if you are burned out? I'm going to share a document in the chat that is a little test you can take to find out if you are burned out. Here's some of the statements that you would respond to in that test. Things like, I feel run down. I feel drained. I have negative thoughts about my job. I am harder and less sympathetic with people than perhaps they deserve. I'm easily irritated by small problems, by my coworkers and my team. And I feel misunderstood or unappreciated by my coworkers. If any of these feelings or thoughts are in your head right now, you might be feeling burned out. So after this webinar, bookmark that page, go back and take that assessment and see if what you're thinking and feeling right now is burned out. So if you are burned out, what do you do? How can we cope with that? The first step to coping with burnout is called emotional self-regulation. That means talking to yourself, positive self-talk, in order to kind of get yourself back to a good, solid place. You're no longer on this roller coaster of emotions, or you're no longer way down, but you're in a very solid place. That can be by doing something called mindfulness exercises. It can be with positive self-talk. It can be something as easy as going outside, being in nature, going to a park, or standing by your open window, letting some sunlight hit you. Those are things that can help you cope with burnout and get your emotions back to a stable, normal feeling. And then focusing on what you want, how you want to feel. Focusing on those emotions can also help to regulate, bring you from down here to up here. So, it's the same idea as when the flight attendant tells you to put the mask over your face before you help someone else. You have to take care of yourself before you can take care of your students. So the first step is taking care of your own emotions before you work with your students. So with that in mind, if you will allow me, I would like for us to go through a mindfulness exercise together so you can see what a mindfulness exercise could be. So if you don't mind, I'm going to play a video and spend 1 minute with me in mindfulness.
We will be guiding you through a 1-minute breathing meditation from Mindful. Thank you for participating. We hope you enjoy this mindfulness exercise. Take a seat with your feet on the ground. Take a deep breath in. Feel your body as you inhale. Take a long breath out. Notice your body as you exhale. Follow your breath in and out. Rest your mind on your belly or your chest or at your nostrils. Just be aware as you breathe in and aware as you breathe out. This concludes the mindfulness exercise.
Thank you for taking 1 minute with me to be mindful, to complete this mindful exercise. So tell me in the chat, how did that feel? How did it feel to participate in this mindfulness exercise? And secondly, do you think you could do an exercise like this with your students? Beth says that it was a nice exercise. Naomi says, great. Jane, relaxing. Wendy, very relaxed. Janice, relaxing. Angel, relaxed. I'm glad that it had that effect. Aida, I understand. I get distracted too. I close my eyes and that helps, I think. It helps me when I start to get distracted. Janice says that of course you can do this with our classes. They get stressed as well. I also think that maybe some longer exercises in your classroom could be used as listening activities where students are showing that they understand what they're hearing by doing things like sitting down, putting their feet on the floor, wiggling their fingers, wiggling their toes, closing and opening their eyes, taking breaths. Those are all signs that your students are understanding what they're hearing. So this can be a good mindfulness exercise that also gives you some information about your students' listening ability. Wendy says that she would do this at the end if time permits. I think that could be excellent. Right before your students leave your classroom, you are sending them on their way, calm, relaxed. I think that's a good idea. Mercy says that some students may not like it, and I can understand. It's a little awkward, especially to do this in front of other people. So I can see that. It could be difficult to do with large groups. I wonder how we could work on that. Maybe putting students into groups with the instructions, maybe giving different students these leadership abilities, lead your small group through this. I'm not sure, but something like that might help. Jane says it's also nice at the beginning to set the mood. I think so too. Either sending your students into the world more calm and relaxed, or when they've just come maybe from a busy hallway, or they've come from another class, they've come from a job, if you're working with adults, getting them centered and calm, stabilizing those emotions before you get to work in your classroom could be really helpful. Yolanda, I love your idea of putting some soothing background music in. I don't think this video had that, but I think that you're right. Some soothing music is also very helpful for emotional regulation. All right, so thank you for sharing your thoughts on how those activities could work and your feelings, and thank you too for going through that exercise with me. I really appreciate it. So a second step to coping with burnout is called self-care. Oprah Winfrey is a talk show host that's very popular in the United States, and she says, breathe, let go, and remind yourself that this very moment is the only one you know you have for sure. So she is saying that we should take care of ourselves in this moment because we're not promised a future. So take care of the person you have here and now. So let's talk about what self-care can look like. And secondly, in addition to self-care, is talking to people who understand. This can be talking to other teachers in your school or in your community, or talking with other teachers in the field, maybe through a Facebook group or in person. But those are going to be people who understand what you're feeling and thinking because they're right there with you. So those are some of the ways that you can deal with burnout, secondly. So let's look more at self-care. So here are some ideas for creating habits of self-care. Regular self-care is going to help you cope with burnout and avoid burnout. So taking quiet moments each day to reflect on your day and on your own emotional state. I was just speaking with an expert on this the other day who said that sometimes when he feels very strong emotions, he'll close his eyes and he'll name that emotion, and he'll tell himself that it's okay to feel that emotion, and then he'll move forward with what to do. So this moment of reflection on what you're feeling, naming it, and then making decisions. And then, as I mentioned, connecting often with people who understand, as well as starting small with self-care. I'll show you some of my favorite ways to do self-care, and then I'll hear from you as well. But small, focused actions can have the largest impact on teacher self-care, as well as that student's success. Because remember, when you are taken care of, when your anxiety and stress is low, that helps your students as well. So here's some of my self-care habits. I make a point to exercise at least 5 days a week. I like to dance. I like to lift weights. So those are my favorite forms of exercise. I like to do that at least 5 days a week. And I think it really helps my mind and my body to feel better. I also make time to read for pleasure, not just teaching textbooks or lesson plans or blogs on education, but books that have nothing to do with my job, books that are just fun and relaxing. I make time for that every day. I also love to cook. It's one of my favorite ways to unwind after a busy workday, is to get in my kitchen with a recipe. I will sometimes put on an audiobook. Again, that reading for pleasure, put on an audiobook, get my recipe out, and cook a healthy meal. It's a great way for me to unwind. What about you? How do you do self-care? Share a couple of things that you do to promote your own well-being. One thing that I was told is that taking care of your basic needs is not self-care. So things like sleeping at night or taking a shower. Those are things that every person needs. Now, if you choose to sleep in when your body tells you you need it, or if you choose to use some aromatherapy to help yourself calm down before sleep, that is self-care. So what are some things that you do for self-care? Raham says that they write about emotions and thoughts in a notebook. Journaling is such a good way to take care of yourself and regulate your emotions. Yolanda says going for a walk with a friend. That getting, even if it's an indoor walk, connecting with other people, going outside, moving your body, that's great. Janice loves singing and playing her ukulele and piano. Playing music can be so relaxing. Wendy says disconnect your phone, go to a spa. Disconnecting your phone, ooh, that's hard, but I agree with you. I think there needs to be time when your phone is away from you and you are focused on the here and now. Alfredo says that he gets enough sleep at night. Gabby listens to music. Janice goes swimming, simply lying on the sand. Oh, yes. I went to the beach this weekend and it was very cold, but I still enjoyed going for a run on the beach. I enjoyed having the sun shine down on me, listening to the waves. Very relaxing. Angel does journaling, closing my eyes and listening to relaxing music, taking care of my plants, lifting weights. These are all really great ideas. I hope that you'll take some of the ideas that your colleagues are sharing in the chat and try some of them out. At the end of this webinar, I'm going to give you a challenge to do just that. All right, so what if you're not sure where to start? Maybe you feel like your day is completely full serving other people, whether it is your students or in your home, in your community. Your whole day is spent serving other people. Where do you start with your own self-care? I found a wellness assessment that you can take that will show you some areas where you need to invest in your own self-care. So I'll show you what I mean. Okay, so beyond regulating your emotions, personal wellness can help you to really understand what areas are important to your overall well-being and some ways that you can support it. So this assessment that you're seeing scrolling here helps you to look at the different aspects or different parts of personal wellness. All the parts of this wellness wheel that you see are important. They all affect your well-being. But sometimes when your day is full of serving other people, you neglect or you leave out certain areas of your own well-being. So as you walk through an assessment like this, you can consider how you're feeling about each area. If your answer is, I'm happy, then you keep going and doing what you're doing. If you answer, I'm unhappy, then it's time for deeper reflection and identify the reasons why you're unhappy in that area and make some positive changes in that area. Maybe add some self-care in that area. This wheel is one of a number of different tools that can be used to help evaluate how you're feeling and where you need to pay attention to your own self-care. So I'll share a link to that in the chat. So after this webinar, you can go through and take that wellness assessment to find the areas in your personal and professional life where you can zone in and improve your own self-care. Okay, so the next part that we're going to talk about is social emotional learning. What is that? The goal of social emotional learning, or SEL, is to help learners become emotionally intelligent, to teach them how to navigate social, emotional, and cultural practices, and to really do well in the classroom, but also in the real world. All of these things are best practices for English language teaching and learning as well. So when we support our English learners with their SEL growth, we are also contributing or helping with their growth and development of emotionally intelligent people in society. So, what are social emotional learning skills? How can we make use of them in the classroom? So what I've shown you here are some of the skills that you can that you develop with social emotional learning, and they're divided into developing your relationship with yourself, which is some of the things we've been doing, right? Emotional stability, mindfulness, emotional regulation, as well as developing your students' relationships with other people, developing their identity, their communication, their empathy. And so I'm going to provide you with a couple of ideas for how you can do that as we wrap up. So one activity that you probably already do with your students, and I'll ask you more about it in a moment, is called exit tickets. So I'm going to give you 3 different exit tickets that you can do with your students to grow one of those areas of social emotional learning. The first is goal setting. On a scale of 1 to 5, rate how comfortable you felt speaking in English today. Write 1 or 2 sentences explaining why, and set a goal for what you plan to do to get a higher number tomorrow. So that is an exit ticket that you can give that asks students to set goals for their speaking. You can also give your student an exit ticket to grow their personal and learning goals. So, for example, reflect on today's lesson. How did the activities or information we learn line up with your own personal learning goals? Think about that and write a paragraph. And finally, a real world exit ticket. You can tell your students, think about a real life time where you can apply what you learned today. Write a short description and include how you plan to use what you learned in our class in the real world. So these are just 3 things that you can give your students as an exit ticket, the last thing they do in your class before they leave, that get them thinking about goal setting, about their personal learning, and about applying things to the real world to be more present in the real world. So several of the activities that we have done today for help you with your own emotional wellness and stability, but can also be used in your classroom. So what about you? Have you ever tried any of these strategies with your students? Share how these different activities have gone in your classroom. So the first activity that we did that you can do with your students is an emotion check-in. The second activity you can do with your students is a mindfulness exercise. Remember, those exercises are all about relationship with self in terms of social emotional learning and growth. So the video that we did was a mindfulness exercise. The last were the exit tickets. Those help students develop their relationships with other people. Have you used these activities with your students, and how did it go? Cece says that she has done emotion check-ins with her students. Maria always does emotion check-ins. I found some really fun emotion check-ins on Pinterest. So if you have a Pinterest account, you can type in emotions check-ins and get lots of really fun charts and graphs and emojis to use with your students. Claudia has also done the emotion check-ins. Very good. So you were doing social emotional learning with your students long before this. Mindfulness activities have been well received in my classroom. Not everyone is comfortable doing this, but I found that most students are. That's great that not only are you trying these activities that you know are going to be successful, but you're also meeting your students where they are. Some are comfortable, some are not, but you're working with your students and their feelings, their thoughts and emotions in the classroom. That's wonderful. So as you are putting your thoughts in the chat, I want to give you a challenge. Claudia says that sometimes she plays relaxing music while they work in class. So here's a self-care challenge for you as you go about the rest of your holiday, your time away from the classroom, is to take 10 minutes every day over this next week to do something just for you. Use one of the activities that your colleagues today shared in the chat that brings you joy and helps you relax. Taking care of yourself is just as important as taking care of your students. Alfredo says that he will put action on it in the new year. Very good. All right, you are invited in just 23 minutes or so. I will be on Zoom and I want to talk to you. I want to hear about what your plans are for the holidays. I want to talk to you about how you're going to recharge during the school break. Share some activities that you've done with your students to help grow their social emotional learning and skills. So please join me at 3 o'clock Lima time, which is just about 23 minutes from now. And let's talk this through. I want to hear from you. I want to learn more about you and your classrooms and your plans for the break. That link will be shared on the Facebook page for RELO Andes as soon as this is over. And as always, if you want more information about any of the resources that were shared today, you can visit American English at State. RELO Andes is also on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. AmericanEnglish.state.gov. So you can find more information about everything you heard here and follow along for the new year. Thanks everyone so much for coming and being a part of today's webinar, for sharing your thoughts, sharing your experiences with me today. Thank you for walking with me through a mindfulness exercise. I hope that you have a wonderful break, that you enjoy the holidays as you celebrate with people you care about. And I hope you'll join me at 3 o'clock on Zoom so we can continue our conversation. Thanks everyone for coming. Have a great afternoon.